gospel message starts with this great ask. James and John come to Jesus and say, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." I think we do this as well. We come to Jesus and this is what we say to him as well. "Jesus, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." Jesus' reply is very simple. What do you ask? What are you asking of God? What is your prayer? For these two apostles, they asked something very large. They didn't go small. Grant that in your glory, in your kingdom of heaven, that we might sit on your right and on your left, or right next to you. Let us be your main advisors in the kingdom of heaven. Instead of denying them their request right then and there, Jesus speaks to them and says, "You don't know what you're asking." Sometimes I think that's what Jesus responds to us in our prayer life. You don't know what you're asking. And then Jesus says to them, "Can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink from?" Which is martyrdom. Are you willing to die like I'm going to die for you? Are you willing to die for others? Are you willing to see other people suffer because of our faith in our God? And are you willing to have a baptism with the baptism that I have? This baptism of faith, this trust in the Father, that the Father will be able to do something great through you. Baptism, this is goes right back to the garden. And Jesus is saying, "Father, take this from me. But don't take it from me. Let your will be done. I'm suffering from this. I don't want this to happen, but let your will be done." Do you have that great faith? Is what Jesus is asking James and John. What is your prayer life? What are you asking God? Is it to accept him, accept yourself into heaven, accept your children into heaven, your grandchildren into heaven? Maybe it's something worldly, something pleasurable. You want to have some great pleasure, power, prestige. Jesus is saying, do you understand what you're asking? To have this great faith is what Jesus says. If you really want me to answer your prayers, have this great faith. To really put it into our hearts, this faith, this trust. This faith and trust in our God to accept us into heaven. This faith and this trust in our God that he will journey through with us throughout our times here on earth. So that we know him and he knows us when it comes time to enter into heaven. And Jesus even remarks even more beautifully about this faith as he continues on, brings all 12 back together again. the other 10, they kind of heard what James and John were saying, but they didn't understand what Jesus was saying. Look, they're just asking for power and prestige in heaven. Jesus is like, that's not for me to give. And so they argued about who's more popular, who's more prestigious, who's more holier. I'm holier than them. So Jesus brought them along and brought them together, the whole 12. And says to them, in the world, in the Gentile world, but so we'll just use the world, right? Those who have power kind of lord it over others. And actually, if you watch the news today, even in our democracy, the leaders lord over those who are supposed to follow them. But Jesus says that's not the way it works for my Father. That's not how it works in heaven. That's not how it works in the church. Supposed to be. If you want to lead, you need to be the servant. The servant of others. What can I get you? What do you need? What do you want? How can I serve you today? What else can I do for you? And that's our job as Christians, to be servants to the world, servants to each other, to help each other grow in our holiness, to help each other to grow in their relationship with Christ. It's not to be able to have something and then, well, I'm the only one who knows how to do this, so I have to do it, and I will direct everyone how to do it. To be humble. And let others and serve others. This humility. But then Jesus says one more step further. But if you really want to be, if you really want glory in heaven, be a slave to others. What is a slave? Someone who does whatever somebody else wants, is so humble. They don't stand up for themselves and fight for themselves. They just do what they are asked. This has very sad connotations in the world. No one wants to be a slave. We don't like slavery. But here Jesus is saying, be a slave to the others. Be so humble that even if you don't want to do it, you'll do it. What is God asking you to do? Are you willing to be his slave? Are you willing to be his servant? What is God asking you to do to build up his kingdom here on earth? To be that slave, to be that servant. To give up some of the things that you desire so that you can have the wonders and glories of God. But here's the most wonderful thing. As we give up our own desires, our own earthly desires, our pleasures, our power, our prominence, just like Christ did, and start to see the love that the Father has for us. And in our suffering, in our inabilities to get what we want, we start to see the suffering servant of Christ. We start to realize the wonders and beauties of what John said at the beginning of his gospel. God so loved the world. He sent his only Son. God so loves you. He sent his Son to die for you, to rise from the dead for you, so that we might have this promise of heaven. Let this love enlighten our hearts. Let this love be our guiding light in our faith. To know that he loves us is why we are able to drink the cup and be the baptized of the baptized that Christ talks about in the gospel. To truly understand that we are his beloved children. That he asks a lot of us, but he also promises glory. He promises so much more.